Ladies and gentlemen, so we are back right now. We're continuing with the English session. Our next guest speaker, it's Dr. Tobias Höllwarth, the president of the EuroCloud Europe Association. Basically, I met Tobias. We are both working for. We are both in the advisory board of the cybersecurity forum from Lille. And honestly, we engaged in various discussions in our long meetings regarding the cloud computing in general, and what would be the the compliance issue related to the cloud. So I invited Tobias to be with us in March when we're supposed to have our conference live. Unfortunately, the COVID situation put us in a cancel our plans actually. Tobias had the chance to be with us in a virtual mode. So Tobias, please be welcome. I'm passing you the floor.
Thank you very much, Uwe. Thank you very much, and to be kind enough to invite me to your great conference. I'm going to talk to you about cloud compliance projects I'm currently running, and the main question behind that is how to reduce business expenditure and risk while simultaneously increase quality and service performance through efficient cloud compliance. Now, this is a very theoretical topic, and I'm going to give you an introduction about sort of how digital transformation is seen, what is happening in the cloud market at the moment, why cloud compliance projects are extremely helpful, specifically at the moment, and how they work. So to give you a little bit of a background about me as a person so that you know who is going to tell you all of these things, I'm in the IT industry since nearly 30 years. I started to do cloud conferences in Austria in 2011 and 12. I did CIO awareness campaigns with Austrian CIOs from the sugar industry, the railway, the chancellor, the skiing industry to promote the technology, the market, not specific products, but the idea of cloud. And I wrote several books about that topic. I'm also running an international network of law firms in 33 countries dealing with exactly that topic of GDPR and IT and cloud law. And I'm responsible within EuroCloud Europe for a global cloud certification scheme, which is called StarAudit. It's used by the Croatian Post and by the Food and Drug Authority in Taiwan and by the Austrian Ministry of Environment. And here at the moment, I'm also involved in the Austrian Cloud Quality Seal from the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the EuroCloud, which is a current ongoing project of the Minister of Digitalization and Economy. But in my normal life, I'm also working, and I'm working for several very large organizations in Austria, so railways, several hospitals, insurance companies, energy companies, and they all have a similar problem at the moment, specifically with COVID. They are pushed very hard into a specific direction, and they have a lot of friction within their companies, and it's not very profitable for the organizations how they approach the topic. Now, what is the background? The background is, of course, the fourth technological revolution, the digital transformation that we experience, all of us now. We see that new resource of productivity are approaching us, like IoT or artificial intelligence, the centralization of IT based on global networks. Specifically, the power machine, the steam machine above is always a centralized production of IT services. Now, what does it mean on companies, that digital transformation? Well, first of all, on a macroeconomic level, we have to understand that 99% of all companies in Europe are small and medium-sized companies, and 92% of all European companies have less than 10 employees, and 50% of all European companies have only one person. So our wealth, the way we live here in Europe, is based on very small companies, and the question whether they have access to new sources of productivity or not, whether they are able to change and transform fast enough, is very critical for our European society. And if you look at the biggest and wealthiest and most powerful companies in the world, the Fortune 500 companies, you can see that in the 1950s, 1960s of the last century, they had an average age of about 75 years. And in the year 2010, the average age of the biggest companies in the world was 14 years. So even these very large companies are struggling to change in that new system. And that is what we see in Austria, in Switzerland, in Germany, that it is all companies are affected. So the power companies are affected by the reduction of energy prices. The railway services are affected by international competition and by competitors from other countries like the United Kingdom, the very small, very modern digital competitors. We can see in hospital areas where the providers of, let's say, blood measurement machines like Philips are telling you, you can use it on site very safely, but you can also transfer the data into our Philips cloud, and we do with artificial intelligence much better analysis of the blood of your patients. So you need to decide whether you keep everything on premise or whether you open yourself up to the cloud, which is a very difficult question. We see it in the insurance sector where the contracts are done differently. We see it in the media sector where media content, television content is produced completely different. We see it in the transportation sector. So it's impacting all business sectors. And that impacts also the way we work. People work differently, even in traditional business sectors. People pay differently, they own or use differently, they communicate differently. We can see that specifically in the COVID situation. They help others in a different way. They communicate or commute differently. So we see that it has impact on the way people work and live on each specific person. And what does it mean on employees? Well, it means the same thing like in the last industrial revolution. People who had jobs, who had proud jobs, who were able to earn their money and feed their families, they are losing their jobs. And it's the same in more sophisticated jobs, like a very important surgeon, the best surgeon in his area in the 1980s, 1990s. What can he do today if he didn't change? He can serve a cup of tea to his colleague if he didn't change. And that massive, very fast change will continue. There is no doubt, which means the learning one is people need to be able to adopt fast to these new technologies. They need to be able to handle them professionally for their companies. You need to expect these new technologies, they will impact the way we work, the way we generate income, the way we serve our customers. We need to expect robotics, Industry 4.0, IoT, and we need to have people who are powerful and smart to adopt to that. Now, the other side is what is happening on the cloud market. To give you a quick overview on the hype cycle of cloud computing, and that is 2019. So there was a big change in 2020. You can see that in the slope of enlightenment and in the plateau of productivity, there are a lot of cloud services there already. And if we go to this expenditure of cloud services, the cloud services predicted the expenditure on cloud services in 2023 will be $400 billion. That is 350% more expenditure on cloud than in normal IT services. And COVID has boosted that figure. What we also see is that not only infrastructure as a service is growing, also SaaS services, software as a service, is growing. And that is important because managing SaaS services is, and having a good cloud compliance and governance on SaaS services is much more complex than infrastructure service. What we also see is that there are in the infrastructure as a service area 2 or 3 oligopolists or nearly monopolists that dominate the market massively. That is also the same in software as a service, but it is very clear that Amazon is massively dominating the market, plus Microsoft. And there is something different also happening. These very good and great providers like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they are doing something very specifically. But let me, before I come to that, let me read you out something I read in Gartner about 3 weeks ago. Gartner wrote, all other vendors in this market are forced to focus on regional dominance or niche workloads given the momentum of AWS. And then in the second paragraph, examples of regional and niche focused vendors are Alibaba and Oracle. Imagine, they are calling Alibaba and Oracle niche markets. And in the last part, they're saying, lastly, IBM remains in a precarious position due to being slow to improve its cloud IaaS offerings. So you can see the principle of digital transformation is the winner takes it all. And you can see that in the market. All other suppliers are far behind. Now, these big providers, they are doing something very clever, Amazon and Microsoft. They are adding microservices around their basic AWS services, Azure services. They're adding security as a service, VPN as a service, Office 365, Maps as a service, mobility as a service. And they are making a great set of services that altogether extremely helpful for the customer. But the vendor login that is done by that is extremely high. It's an extremely effective vendor login. Most companies have no chance to get out of that contractual situation because the transitions costs are too high. So learning number 2, technology is influencing massively how we are going to do things. We cannot change these things. They are changed by others. The decisions are made by others. And it is very difficult to set up a hybrid IT environment. You need a lot of know-how in the governance. You have to understand the complexity behind, and there is always a weakest link, and that is normally the people behind, and the contractual obligations, the vendor login, all these things are a huge challenge for the departments in companies, for the legal department, the procurement department, the IT department, and even the compliance and governance compartments. Now, the reality in many organizations is they have slept for quite a long time, and that was not a very good idea because the people were not able to try out things, to learn, to bring in a specific governance model to that organization that is helpful. And what we see in all these companies, railway companies, government organizations, hospitals, is that there is a very uneconomical and conflict-laden situation between employees who want to make use of these digital technologies because they need it, and other employees who want to protect the company. That is a very unproductive friction due to the absence of standardized cross-departmental selection and quality assurance. And that is bad because, first of all, you have a lack of compliance, and secondly, you miss digitalization potential. Now, a pragmatic approach that we started was, we called it cloud compliance for companies. And you can see it on that infographic, which I provide you with pleasure if you're interested, that shows more or less what we are doing. So the situation is there are a lot of cloud offers bumping onto a company from conferences, from providers, business department that see things. And what they need is an internal cloud competence team that uses a cloud strategy that is easy to understand and to handle, and a logistic framework, which is called cloud policy. And with these two tools, they can provide quality assurance and cloud selection so that the right cloud service fits to the right use case without risks that are not clear. So what they're getting is a compliance process, evaluation tools, and they can develop a cloud competence team. The sort of hard facts are they have a cloud strategy which the board of directors is accepting. They have some guidelines and a good reporting system. Now, what we do is normally we have template text elements for the cloud strategy. Like that, it is much faster to develop a cloud strategy that fits to the IT and digital strategy of a company. So, for example, the Austrian Railways, they tried 2 years to get to a cloud strategy and they failed, and it was able for us to do that in 3 weeks, and it's now valid for all organizations within the company. Well, and then we use a lot of templates that come from the business canvas side. So approaches and methodologies that are very easy and very well known in companies, we transform them into templates that help us to qualify the demand, the use case, the business case, the risk side, and then the supplier side, so that we can qualify which level of cloud quality do we need at a specific moment for a specific use case, right? And what we do then is we implement a process of quality gates and of reporting gates, and we try to eliminate cloud providers and services that do not fit as early as possible, because it's very costly to do it later on. And that is the result, the same infographic for a specific company. So this, for example, is the organization which runs all government health care insurance companies of Austria. And that is their color scheme, but also their final process that has been developed for them and works very fine. So learning 3, what needs to be done? First of all, the companies are specifically with COVID-19, and they realize it all banks, all hospital companies, they understand that they need to work differently. At least they need to collaborate online differently, even the doctors in hospitals. So they need to allow more. You need to start now. You need to define a strategy which is clear in the language, not very long, very specific. Everybody knows the guidelines right and left. Then you need to define the rules that are applicable in your company, and very important guidelines and procedures that are very simple to implement, because these two people here in that plane, they are not superheroes. That's why they can fly that plane. They just have very good guidelines and procedures that they follow, and that's why this plane flies safely. And that is a very big topic, and so I cannot go very deep into it. You need to understand use case specifics. That is the trick of everything, that you are able to define the use case very clearly so that you can fit the appropriate cloud service. Now, that's so far from my side. You go back to you if you want. I'm ready for your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tobias. Absolutely very interesting presentations, and some question arise immediately. So 20 years by now, do you think we will still create on-premise infrastructure, or everything will be basically on cloud?
In 20 years, Jesus Christ. In 20 years, well, first of all, I don't think that a lot of companies will produce online IT services, because they will not have the people that run them safely. It will be very expensive to get people who are able to run an Exchange server 24/7 all year long. And it's not the core value of a company. But there will, of course, be some situation where you need that. Let's say, to run a railway station. You don't want to outsource that to the cloud, because it has to be very safe, it has to be very fast, and it is very specific for your company. And that's the same for a hospital. You want to be independent. You want to make sure that some of the services you need are very close to your center of production. But I would say there will be much less than now. But honestly, 20 years in the year 2000, can you imagine the way we worked in 2000? And could you imagine at that time what kind of powerful computer this is? Well, I hope I will be in pension at that time, and I don't need to handle these things anymore.
You mentioned about the vendor lock-in.
Yes.
After COVID, I mean, during COVID, basically, we noticed, and I think you agree with me, that the company, there is a process of acceleration to the cloud, to cloud adoption solutions. So, but CIOs and IT departments in general are concerned about this. You mentioned vendor lock, because I don't like to go into Amazon and then Amazon to push me and to fix the prices after I have all the infrastructure on their premises. So now companies are moving to multi-cloud strategies. So what would be, in very short, in 30 seconds, your advice, except, to follow those procedures you mentioned during the presentation, but what would be, a clear advice for the CIOs to avoid as much as possible?
Yes, I mean, you are absolutely right. I can see it in my hospital customers, so organizations that run hospital. And my main counterpart there was chief security officers, and they always said, cloud is not possible for us as a hospital. We need to be independent. We are very special. And they were right. During COVID, suddenly, even this hospital changed radically. So Teams or Zoom, all these things suddenly were allowed, although they were completely forbidden before. And now the security people are my main partner, because they say we need a government and compliance structure so that we can get out of some services again, because we know they were okay in March or April, but we definitely don't want them for a long time. So I see that, and I can also see another, I think vendor login for Amazon infrastructure service is not a big problem, because it's very easy to get it in or out. But having your Active Directory, so your user management with Microsoft, you have your server in Azure, you have your mail services in Office 365, you're getting your endpoint licenses for Word, PowerPoint, you're getting your OneDrive, your file as a service for them. I think that is an extremely questionable situation, and all companies are running towards O365. I see that very difficult, because getting out of there is really a matter. And don't forget, in April, Trump tried to close down all online services from the United States for the country of Venezuela. And it was only 6 days before that came to effect that it was prevented. So it is like electricity. You depend on somebody. And I think it's extremely important to evaluate every year who are our main suppliers and in which way can we get at least some independence when we think it's too dangerous to rely just on one supplier. We always did it like that. We also have to do it with cloud services.
Dr. Tobias Höllwarth, thank you very much for your presence, and thank you very much for being with us. Keep in touch, and see you on the next edition. Thank you.
See you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
We're going back to our next speaker, so we'll be back in about 1 minute. Thank you.